Special shout out to the Ponton sisters. Thank you for joining me today. And one of their best friends, I guess, Kyla.
My girlfriend used to date you. How would you feel if she held you down and raped you? Tried to try, but she never could escape you. She was in love, and I'd ask her how. I mean, why? What kind of love coming wood? Black your eyes.
DJ Apple Whiskey, can we start it back?
Make you wish she would die. He bought you things, gave you diamond rings, but some things wasn't worth none of the pain that he brings, and you stayed. What made you fall for him? That had the power to make you fall for him. I thought you was.
Can you all hear me? Thumbs up if you can hear me. Thank you.
What you saw for him? That wasn't love, baby girl. You was screaming. I could have killed you when you said this. He was growing from the seed. Your mind, I don't even know you, and I killed you myself. You played with her like a dime and put it back on the shelf. Wouldn't let her go to school and better herself. She had a baby by you. You ain't giving no help. Big time hustler, make my one's born every day, and every day she was your sucker. How could you beat the mother of your kids? How could you tell her that you love her? Don't give a fuck if she lived. She told me she believed you. I admit it, she did, but came back, made up a lie about you missing your kids. Sweet kisses, baby ain't even know she was your mistress. Had to deal with this fight, this phone call from you. You thought like you possessed her, telling me to mind my business, that it was her life instead of out of it. I tried and said just for him, I keep it ready quick. No, 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 no. Love is blind, love is blind. Can you blow your mind? Yes, it will. What you think is what makes you leave me? I don't even know you, and I want you dead. Don't know the facts. I saw the blood pour from my head. See, I lay down beside her in the hospital bed, and about 2 hours later, doctor said she was dead. Had the nerve to show up at her mother's house the next day to come and pay your respect to help the family pray. She went out on the window and let a tear drop. And before you had a chance to get up, you heard my gun cop. Pray it to me now. I ain't God, but I pretend. I ain't starting like this. I'ma bring it to an end. And I did. Clear shots and no regrets. Never cops coming like you under the jail. But whatever my sister, you can never figure out. Even if I let you live, what I love was all about. I consider her my blood and it ain't come no bigger.
Y'all give a hand clap. Can I see some screen hand claps for DJ Apple Whiskey? Thank you so much.
Thank you,
DJ, for being a part of this launch for my first session. And for you all that don't know, DJ Alpha Whiskey is a graduate of Hampton University. So I appreciate that HU love that you're giving me. And also, she's a federal air traffic controller. So she also does a very, very hard job. Air traffic controllers are known to have one of the most stressful jobs in the world. So Ashley, I really appreciate you taking the time out today. And if you all want to check her out, go to her website, DJ Alpha Whiskey. If you all have any events with organizations or programs that you think may need a virtual DJ, feel free to hit her up. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So, everyone, thank you so much for joining today, and understand that I really appreciate you taking the time out on a Saturday morning, and I hope that you will want to continue throughout the remaining months through May of next year. But this is a new thing for me as far as speaking in front of a camera to a group of young people. I'm used to being in front of an audience, but I wanted to do something to commemorate my 20th anniversary that's coming up in December. And so, with the song that was played today, Love is Blind, and you know, the concept of the program is love, let our voices educate. Basically, with my incarceration and me going to prison and losing my freedom, it wasn't the fact that I was criminally minded. The fact of the matter is, it was because of love and me choosing this relationship that led me down this crazy path. And so, as you continue to participate in the program, you'll learn more about my story. You should be getting a copy of my book, Poster Child, in the mail within the next few days. But with the song Love is Blind, if you look at the lyrics, it says, Love is blind, it will take over your mind. What you think is love is truly not. You need to elevate and find. Love is blind, and it will take over your mind. And you can read the rest from the script, but ultimately, with the relationship that I was in, I allowed myself to be blinded by certain things that were going on, and I was paying more attention to my heart, but I needed to also elevate my mind in understanding who I was and what I wanted in a relationship and what was best for me. And that would have caused me and elevated my mind. It would have caused me to protect myself. So I wanted to go in on this discussion because October is Domestic Violence Month, and to talk about domestic violence and make sure you all understand the intricacies with it. So if we could go to the next slide. What is domestic violence? Domestic violence is the willful intimidation, physical assault, battery, sexual assault, and or other abusive behavior as part of a systematic pattern of power and control perpetrated by one intimate partner against another. It includes physical violence, sexual violence, threats, economic, emotional, and psychological abuse. And, you know, for me growing up, I tell young people when I'm speaking, never in a million years would I have anticipated that I would have this story, that I would have allowed myself to be in an abusive relationship. Because when I was your age, I would see certain talk shows and programs where women and girls were talking about how they were in these abusive relationships, and you know, how they were afraid to leave and crying. And I can remember just turning the channel and saying, "They stupid. Why are they staying in this relationship?" But you know, come around 3, 4 years later, I'm exactly in the same situation. It's something that there were red flags that I should have paid attention to, and oftentimes there are red flags before the abuse happens. So you just need to make sure that you pay attention to those red flags. And if you do find yourself in an abusive relationship, love yourself enough to realize that you need to get the help in order to figure out a safe way to get out of it. If it's a really like crazy situation, which as we go further into the program, you'll read about just how crazy of a situation that I was in, which I probably needed to seek help in order to get safely out of that relationship. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Now, with my prison experience, um, and with how far I've come today, understand that a lot of that has been predicated on relationships. And so some good relationships, some bad relationships, but ultimately when I was in prison, there was a chaplain, and basically he was over religious programming in the prison where I was. And eventually, when I came home and when I was inside the prison, I was involved in several activities. I sung in the choir, I played lead roles in Christian plays, I did praise and worship dance. But after coming out of prison, there was this chaplain that I spoke about, Chaplain Dolphus, and he reached out to me a few years after coming out, and he wanted me to be on the board of his organization called National Alliance of Faith and Justice. And through that relationship, he had his wife, because he eventually died. And so his wife took over that organization, and her name is Addie Richburg. And I just want to do a special shout out to Addie because today is actually her birthday. And so for years, she's wanted me to focus more on my foundation and to have programming on my own that I can share with young people, because I partner with her, and you can look on my website and see things that I've done with her. What's Love Got to Do with It program. But on this slide, you will see What's Love Got to Do with It, where we break down the letters L-O-V-E. And so in this session, you're hearing about lessons in love with the L, O, oppression in its rawest form while incarcerated, and V, we're going to talk about voting rights and domestic violence, and E has to do with empowerment. And empowerment is defined as is the process of becoming stronger and more confident, especially in controlling one's life and claiming one's right. And ultimately, ever since my release from prison, I have surrounded myself around people and relationships that have helped to empower me. And you all can do the same thing. And that's why you want to be very careful of who it is that you associate yourself with, because you don't want anybody pulling you down. And sometimes it could even be family members that pull you down. But you need to make sure that you constantly do things that can help empower you as a young person and build yourself up. So one of the things that I want to ask, and if I could get a volunteer to respond, or maybe two, I would like to know, what lessons have you learned about love and relationship? Does anyone volunteer and speak? Come on now.
I can go, but
Okay.
something that I've learned is that, it's a lot about communication. And, there's been so many times where I don't communicate something and assumptions just start getting made about the whole situation. And as long, like, if you're like both honest with each other and you both try and communicate, then that just kind of things a whole lot easier. Maybe it's not always it's not always going to fix everything, but it's definitely a whole lot better than as soon as you don't start communicating and being honest, then assumptions start getting made about the other person. And that's a lesson that I've learned.
Very true. Stephen, thank you so much for that comment, because ultimately communication is key within relationships, and things can spiral downward if you don't have that engagement. Does anyone else want to comment?
I would like to comment.
Okay.
So for me, I would say that relationships are 50-50, and it's about, giving and receiving. Like you said, it's with communication. You don't know unless you're trying. So if you're not trying in a relationship, then there's really nothing to give effort into.
Very good. True, true. It takes two, right? It takes two to make a thing go right. That's old school. So thank you so much for you two for contributing to that discussion. And next up, I want to play a video that will help you understand more about my story. And I usually like to show the video because some people just, hear that I went to prison and not really understand what it was like, or that experience, because of, it's almost 20 years later and my life seems all together. So I like to show this video because it'll show you when I was incarcerated in federal prison. So I'm going to go ahead, and hopefully there will be no technical glitches because I'm responsible for the video. So hold on. Can you all see this?
Share the screen.
Not yet.
Can you all hear this?
No, ma'am.
No? So, Kelly, is there anything, will any of these come from here? Because I played this yesterday. For Howard University. Just bear with me for a second. Just bear with me for a second. Is it one of these? Is it one of these? Can you all hear it now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great.
It's low though.
Your 3-year-old grandson Aman outside your suburban Richmond, Virginia home. Married 30 years, the Smiths are college graduates. Gus is an accountant, and Desmond is a school teacher. They've spent their entire lives working to create a loving home environment and raising their only child, Kemba, who's now 26 years old. At this stage of their lives, it would appear as though they've got it all. But behind all the smiles and laughter is a deep sadness and pain, because their daughter has been virtually snatched away from them. It's a story the Smiths can hardly come to grips with. Their little girl showed so much promise for the future. Kemba did all the normal things as a little girl, piano lessons, ballet, gymnastics, summer camp, computer camp. We would be 2 out in the rain playing, or out running around, doing exercises. We did a lot together. Their world into a living hell. He knew who she was. That she was very naive, and she was gullible, and she basically took advantage of her. Kemba became Peter's girlfriend and his punching bag. In 1993, he was indicted on a list of drug charges. Kemba, who was then 7 months pregnant, also took the fall. She was convicted of conspiracy to distribute roughly 500 pounds of crack cocaine, money laundering, and making false statements to a federal agent. The conspiracy conviction means that by knowing and participating in Peter's drug dealing, Kemba was also responsible for the entire drug operation. Kemba Smith is serving a 24-and-a-half-year prison sentence here at the Federal Correctional Institution in Danbury, Connecticut. From the street, you can see trees, flowers, and beautiful landscaping. But beyond the top of this hill is what prison officials don't want our cameras to videotape. It's the facility surrounded by rows of barbed wire, security cameras, and prison guards. But we were granted a one-on-one interview with Kemba. As she walked into the visiting room, you can see the toll this ordeal has taken on her. For the people who've never seen you before, just tell everybody how you're doing it. I think it would be easy for me to say that I was fine, but that's not the case. In all actuality, I'm struggling to try to maintain my growth while I'm in my mental, physical, and emotional growth. Kemba says that during the court case, prosecutors admitted that she did not use, handle, or or sell crack cocaine. But because of the large quantity of drugs, Kemba became another victim of stiff minimum mandatory sentencing laws. It doesn't make sense to me at all. I think it's a total waste. As for Peter, he didn't do any prison time. He was found in Washington State for shot. Yeah. With everything you know now about Peter and everything he's done to you, how do you feel about this? Do you somebody in anywhere? No, I can't say that I would because of my faith. But Kemba says she stayed with Peter because she was terrified of him and what he might do. But there was verbal and physical abuse. Where he would go into ways of strangling me, and to the point where I thought that I was going to die. Throughout my life, she knew he had been here. We knew where we lived. And none of that, best friend. And none of that seemed around. Let's talk about your family. How are they coping with all of this? I know it's very hard for my parents, and I appreciate everything that they're doing and the love that they have for me. And I know it hurts. You know, I see the pain in their faces. So this is the part of prison that really hits the heart and it's painful. It's knowing what you're doing to family because it's not easy for them out there. And I know that me being their only child and the things have turned out the way that they turned out, and they have to continuously fight and go to day bring me home, and they're not going to stop fighting until I'm home. We both can promise that we will stay strong, stay focused, pray to the Lord, that He will listen to our prayers, answer our prayers, and bring her home soon. While incarcerated, Kemba's parents have the tough job of raising little Aman. He's a bright and very inquisitive little boy. He always questions why his mommy can't come home. I just basically explained to him that mommy is a timeout, an adult timeout, and that I wanted to be home with him, but at this particular time, I have to be in timeout and be away from him. Kemba's story has been told in Emerge magazine, newspapers, and television. The response has been phenomenal. Hundreds of letters from around the world have come pouring in. Kemba's main hope is that by going public, people will think long and hard about the choices they made before hanging out with the bad crowd or doing something illegal. Don't allow the system to snatch you up and take you away from your family and to rob you from becoming a better person. Step out of that lifestyle for now. You know, when you can, when you're not being guilty. And make something of your life. For BET News, I'm Tracy Brown.
Okay. So speaking of family, and I would be remiss if I didn't shout out my mom and dad, because I know that they're on the call. And when we talk about let our voices educate, when stuff was crazy and their baby girl was in federal prison, they made a decision that they were going to be okay with doing this magazine article years ago. And this magazine article is what launched my freedom. And so the power of educating and using your voice to move things forward, I am a prime example, and my parents are a prime example. So thanks, Mom and Dad. And also with the story, you were able to see again a picture of the Peter, the drug dealer that I was in the relationship with. And we'll talk more as we go further into the program, but I also want to give a shout out to my kids. My son, he's in Amsterdam studying, and also my daughter Phoenix, which she's on the call and upstairs, but they also have used their voices as well. But in moving forward, I do want to launch this domestic violence poll. And we'll talk more about my story, but I just wanted to give you a snippet. Okay, let's see what you all think is a myth and a fact. All right, the first question was, domestic violence is a private family matter. 82% of you all said it's a myth. 18% said it's a fact. In fact, it is a myth. Domestic violence is everyone's business. Keeping domestic violence secret helps no one, has been shown to harm children, incurs substantial costs to society, and serves to perpetuate abuse through learned pattern of behavior. So that is a myth. The second question, most of the time, the abuse that happens in domestic violence situations isn't serious. Mostly everyone got that one, but that is actually a myth. Domestic violence is an illegal act in the US and is considered a crime with serious repercussions. Although there are aspects of domestic violence such as emotional, psychological, spiritual abuse that may not be considered criminal in a legal sense, serious and long-lasting physical, emotional, and spiritual harm can occur and often does. Each and every act of domestic violence needs to be taken seriously. And the third question, domestic violence happens more with dumb and poor people. That one was probably pretty evident, but what I wanted to make sure everyone got, domestic violence is prevalent in every community, affects all people regardless of age, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, gender, race, religion, and nationality. And the last question, an average of 24 people per minute are victims of rape, physical violence, or stalking by an intimate partner in the United States. More than 12 million women and men over the course of a year. Is that a myth or fact? And the most of you all did right answer. That is in fact a fact. So that concludes the domestic violence portion of this segment. And we'll dig more into the domestic violence aspect. And we have a couple of more minutes until our next guest comes on. And I'm just gonna ask and open up for conversation. Do any of you all have any questions or comments, or maybe wanna talk about if you've ever witnessed or seen, someone in a abusive situation, maybe when you all were physically in school, or maybe when you tried to help someone else? Any comments? Okay. Everybody's being shy today, huh? It's okay. With regard to the next segment, which is going to be talking about voting rights, I do have a guest, and she's also a Hampton University graduate, and I'm grateful that she's going to be able to come on. But I am going to speak a bit about the fact that this is something that is really dear and passionate to me, because in 2008, after I came out of prison, I wasn't able to participate in the most historical election in this nation. But I mean, I don't know, this one might trump that one. But the fact that I had lost my right to vote after I came home, and it's something that made me feel less than human, because I was seeing everyone else go to the polls, and I was, working in school, paying taxes, I owned a home. And so it's something that I felt like I needed to use my voice and my experience to try to help motivate and change laws. And so to talk about voter disenfranchisement a little bit, is voter disenfranchisement is taking away someone's right to vote. And in the state of Virginia, that they permanently disenfranchise someone from voting unless you apply or unless you go online after you come out, after you have a felony conviction, you have to go online to reinstate your registration. And if you have a certain offense or crime, you can't even get your rights restored, or you have to go through a more extensive process to get your rights restored. So Virginia's felony disenfranchisement law, I want you to know that there's a historical context to why formerly incarcerated people have to fight to get their voting rights restored after they come home. And so the law, if you look at this slide, was originally intended to keep African Americans from voting. During the Virginia Constitutional Convention of 1901-1902, delegate, an actual state representative, Carter Glass, he was a US Senator, made this statement. And he said that this plan, which included felony disenfranchisement, will eliminate the darky as a political factor in this state in less than 5 years, so that in no single county will there be the least concern felt for the complete supremacy of the white race in the affairs of government. And so for me, when I read that passage, it made me really want to help with the Get Out the Vote effort in 2008, even though I couldn't participate in the election. And so I was fortunate to be able to work with some of the people that actually helped to bring me home. And so a man's named Ben Jealous, he actually was running for governor in Maryland. He didn't win, but at the time back then, he was NAACP's, the national president for that organization. And so he actually asked me to be a part of a delegation that traveled to Geneva, Switzerland. And so in going to Geneva, Switzerland, just by me sharing my story and through the advocacy work that I was doing, I was able to talk to some of the high officials in the United Nations. And I can remember speaking to a high official from Nigeria, and he actually couldn't believe that the United States of America had laws that would do this to its citizens when America is supposed to be one of the most democratic nations in the world. That representative actually said that in Nigeria, they actually let people who are in prison vote. So I know that that's something across the country now, when you talk about criminal justice reform, that's something that organizations are trying to push, which is to get people registered who are in jail, because oftentimes in jail, people haven't even been convicted of a crime. A lot of people are there on bond. And so those people, if they haven't been convicted of the crime, they should still be able to have their right to vote. So I know that there are some states that are allowing people to register and vote within local jails. And so, Vicki, do you know if Aman has logged on yet? Oh, she says she's in the waiting room, Vicki.
Okay. I don't see her there. I do not see her there. I don't see her there.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh, there she is. Okay, got her.
Okay. I can't see her. Aman, are you on?
She's starting, her audio is on. She is starting her video.
Okay. I'm just going to start introducing her. Like I mentioned before, Aman is, hello, Aman. I'm introducing you now. Thank you. Aman Victoria Toon is a 2020 graduate of Hampton University, whoop, whoop, with a dual degree in political science and international studies. She is currently a postgraduate student at the University College of London in England, pursuing her master's degree in international public policy. She is also doing an internship this fall for the U.S. House of Foreign Affairs Committee. She currently serves as the president of the NAACP Virginia State Conference Youth and College Division. An active student on campus, Aman served as president of the Hampton University chapter of the NAACP, vice president of Generation Action, a member of the SGA Senate, social action chair of Delta Sigma Theta sorority, hello soror, and was also involved in many other campus organizations. Aman has had the distinct pleasure of speaking at national conferences and has been actively engaged in working on voter registration and the Get Out the Vote efforts while she was on campus and in the Hampton Roads area. As a result of this work, she received a grant from the Democratic National Committee to continue to get out the vote in Hampton Roads area and engage in important conversations around Black women and activism. Aman, thank you so very much for joining us today. And one of the questions that I wanted to ask you and to have you share with the group is, as Virginia NAACP Youth and College Division President, what have you done from your high school and college years to have an impact on voting in our country?
Definitely, and I'm really happy to be here with you guys this morning / afternoon. I'm so glad to be able to talk with you guys a little bit about voting and its importance and all of that. So in relation to what I've done in terms of like getting out the vote efforts from high school through college, kind of a lot. So in high school, it started out with me and basically my friends. We just kind of always knew that we were excited to get to vote, which might sound weird, but like when you're growing up your whole life and people are telling you when you're 18, you get to do all these things, and one of those things is to vote, you're like, I'm ready to turn 18. And so when we finally turned 18, we were like, oh my gosh, we get to vote. Like, who are we voting for? And at that point, I actually was already in college. And so at that point, I think it was about the 2016 election. So it was Hillary versus Donald Trump. And I turned 18 December 9th. So I actually didn't get to vote in that presidential election. And so I was very, very frustrated.
Prior to you coming on, I was already talking about voter disenfranchisement and part about my experience in working with the NAACP. So I'm very excited and blessed and I'm looking at my computer screen, but I'm very blessed and excited to have you being the Youth and College Division President for the Virginia State Chapter. So pardon me for interrupting, and I know you were talking about the Trump and Hillary Clinton election.
No, you're totally fine. Actually, I'm glad you played that video. I took a little, like a few notes because I was like, this is something I would like to address. But back just really quickly to my experience with voting and what I've done as Youth and College Division President. In terms of getting out the vote, we have, in these different circumstances, we've done a lot of virtual seminars. So we've done some like town halls talking about this lesser of two evils, discussing why people might be hesitant about the election. We've been talking about, we did like a full week of Instagram lives with our National Youth and College Director, Tiffany D. Lofton, with a whole bunch of other special guests, which was awesome. We have done, so much. Our chapters within the state actually have done a lot in terms of educating their students on campus, and then also we in turn educate them, and we have a Virginia Voters campaign that we are currently doing in order to get out the vote, counting down until the election, asking people what their voter plans are, because it's really, really important that you know what your plan is to vote, because there's a lot of voter suppression going on, so you just should prepare for standing in long lines and things like that. So we've been talking about having those kinds of discussions. And so that's kind of a lot of what I do as Virginia State Conference President as it relates to voting. And what I wanted to address quickly from the video, which we've also discussed in the Virginia State Conference with our college chapters, with our youth councils, with our high school students who are preparing for voting, or even our middle school students who are just, we're telling them to help out their parents or their grandparents and things like that. But one of the things that we talked about, and I've talked about this a lot when I was at Hampton, was that it's hard right now, politically at any point, I think, because there is no like perfect political candidate. And I feel like a lot of people want a perfect politician, and we are not perfect people, period, regardless of you're a politician or not. And also, I think politicians a lot of the time either make grave mistakes that constitute to horrible things that happen to the people that they have to apologize for, which we've seen with Kamala Harris, we've seen with Bill Clinton, etc. Or we have politicians who I think try to be perfect, and then it's hard for them to get certain things done, which was what happened with Bernie Sanders. So I think that it's kind of like a double-edged sword. And I think that with this election, in terms of voting between the lesser of two evils, I think Donald Trump is inherently evil, and I think that his cabinet is evil, and I think Mitch McConnell is evil. I think they are literally the detriment of this country. And we could say, you know, we could go back to the 60s and the 50s, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that what they have done is absolutely great. I mean, it's infuriating. And I think that if you have friends who are hesitant, or if you have family members who are hesitant and they're like, I would say, you know, you're not just voting for a president, you're also voting for a cabinet. So personally, I don't want Betsy DeVos to be the Secretary of Education because she's not fighting to forgive student loan debt, right? I know that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden already have a plan to forgive HBCU student loan debt, or to forgive Black student loan debt and things like that, right? I don't want Attorney General William Barr to be the Attorney General of the United States because he does nothing for the African American community. And he's also just done so many horrible things to people in general. And Mitch McConnell, you know, he's over the Senate right now. There is a coronavirus bill sitting on his desk for them to vote on. And instead of voting on that bill, they are trying to push through a Supreme Court nominee. And so it's more about it's not really about the president's, in my opinion. It's really about who's on the presidential cabinet, who is the Senate leader, who is over the House. Like, it's really about those seats, rather than just Trump and Joe Biden. It's a lot bigger than that. And so if you do, I saw those things brought up in the video, and I just wanted to say, you know, if you have friends or if you have family members, whoever, if it's you yourself, you know, I would say, think about it more as, okay, it's not just about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Joe Biden could make Bernie Sanders over education, right? He could make Elizabeth Warren over something else. He could, you know, there's a lot of things that could change drastically with a president coming into office, and who they appoint to the cabinet. So that's how I would charge that, but I'll be quiet now so that
that's all of that, Aman, is fantastic. I'm just excited because it seems like you've been doing this work for a long time, and you're so well versed in it as well. And I think you're right. But I do want to put in a disclaimer in the fact that, you know, we're not encouraging which way a person should vote, and Aman is entitled to her opinion. And so that's just your personal opinion.
Yeah, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the NAACP at all. That's just Aman saying, I personally do not. I think that they are evil.
My question to you, Aman, is like, you know, what do you think? I mean, it's let our voices educate. What do you think we can do? Because I can remember even with the sorority and walking in, you know, Essex Village, I don't know what the new name of it is in the city of Richmond, and, you know, encouraging people to register to vote. We were going door to door and registering people. And what I didn't realize is that there's actually even a polling place in their community center on election day. But there's some people that just they're not interested. And, you know, I was having a conversation with my husband. He was like, you would think, if since we're in a nation where Black people couldn't vote for so long, that we would be running to the polls. But what do you think we can do to get young people and communities to want to even be interested to vote? What do you say to that?
Yeah, I think it's hard, because that was something that we actually dealt with even like when I was at Hampton, that we're still dealing with today. And I think it's also, I think a lot of it has to do with education and educating people who don't know, or who might be confused. Because at this point, I know that the election has become like this whole ball of confusion when it really shouldn't be. And so that just goes into educating. And then I also know that some people just feel really discouraged, and they're just like, well, I did vote, you know, for this senator or for this house or for this representative, and they did not fulfill their promise on what, you know, they said that they were going to do when they were running. And I think that holding elected officials accountable for what they say on the campaign is incredibly important. Like, I know a lot of people don't know, but so I used to intern with my state senator, Senator Chris Van Hollen, and people would call us all the time telling us like, I want the senator to vote like this. I want the senator to, there's this issue in my neighborhood, or X, Y, and Z. And we have to write that down. Like, we have to take tallies. And that's in every Senate office and in every House of Representatives office, whether it's an intern, whoever it is. If you call and you tell them, I know that this is an issue in my community, I want you to vote on X, Y, and Z bill, or can you propose this bill? They have to take that down, and they have to bring it to the senator or the representative. Like, they have to do it. And a lot of people don't know that. Like, I didn't even actually know that until I started interning with them. So
do they fear if that person calls in, and do they find out if that person can actually vote, or do they just still tally?
Well, it doesn't actually even, so in terms of like the voting aspect, it's more so just like if you live in the area. So like if that person is your senator and you have an issue, you call and you tell them what it is, you have to take the tally. So back then there was like a really big, it was like 2018 when I interned, there was like a huge, I forgot what the issue was. I think it might've been like the detention camps with children being taken away and all these different things. And we got like 80 tallies that we had to give to the senator. And if the senator doesn't vote the way that, you know, the tallies technically went, the way that he's representing the state, right? And so all these people are calling from your state and they're saying, we want you to vote like this because you represent us. If he doesn't do that, then you can just vote him out. But I mean, he did do that, and he actually co-sponsored a bill. But you can do that, even as it relates to voting. If you're like, I noticed that there's this polling place is closed down, you can call them for that. And there's also other phone numbers that you can call if you recognize like, hey, because you also have rights as a voter. And so I think that a lot of people also don't know that, right? They technically can't turn you away at the polls if you register to vote, if you know you're in that jurisdiction, and if they've told you that this is your polling place. Because I know a lot of people sometimes even the people who are working the polls don't know all of the information. And so I think that educating people on things like that and letting them know so that they don't feel as discouraged, and so that they also know their rights, and can be like, oh, well, now that I know this, I can tell my mom or my aunt or my cousin, so that they also understand that, you know, this is something that's really important, and I don't have to be discouraged or have to, you know, not use my voice just because they're telling me one thing. But now, because I know my rights and I'm educated, I can let them know, actually, I can vote here. Actually, you don't have the right to tell me that you can't, you know, do this thing. So I think that's one of the things that we're trying to do now, and encouraging people to not be so discouraged and to help out their communities and things like that.
Great. Thank you, Aman. I know there's another segment that I want to show, but I think what you're doing is awesome, and I just hope that, you know, people will continue to show up. I voted yesterday, and I was amazed, you know, even in the rain, that there were lines wrapped around. So we just have to keep educating, like you said, people about the importance of voting. But one of the things I want to make sure that we do before going, I do have another poll. And Vicki, if you could put that up, and it relates to voting disenfranchisement. And I spoke about that earlier, Aman, and ultimately talking about how I lost my right to vote. And I wanted to know with this polling question, because I want to talk about this a little bit more. And the polling question is, what NBA player has invested in assisting formerly incarcerated people to be able to vote in the upcoming elections? And how many seconds, Vicki, do they have?
We'll give them about another 45 seconds.
Okay.
All right, it's ending in 10 seconds.
Okay. Let's see. We got Dwayne Wade, 36%, and LeBron James, 64%. And nobody thought Steph Curry did anything. I'm surprised about that. But the correct answer is LeBron James. And so, and actually at one of the playoff games, you know, how they virtually have people in the stands. Some of the formerly incarcerated people that he helped were actually in the stands. And it's an organization out of Florida. I can't remember the exact name, but the head over the organization is Desmond Meade. And I want to show this video clip where he's in this video. And before we show the video clip, Vicki, can you show that last slide with the vote with the thing over my mouth?
It didn't work. Wait a minute. There we go.
Yeah, they made mistakes. They did their time. They deserve to vote. And so Desmond is actually the guy that's, you know, the only man that's on the slide. But we actually traveled together, as I was sharing with you all, to Geneva, Switzerland, to talk to high officials about not being able to vote in the United States. And so he's from Florida, and he's been doing this work for years. I have done work in the state of Virginia, in order to change the law here to allow formerly incarcerated people to vote. It's having to change the amendment for the state of Virginia. It's not as easy as it is in California, because they can just put it on their election for people to vote for it, but it's not that simple here. So if you could go ahead and play the video, Vicki, with regard to LeBron James.
Dealing with that delay firsthand, among them, a mayor in Volusia County. Fox 35's Vicki Carr talking to him about the wait for answers.
It was not extraordinarily bad, but we had no energy. We had headaches. We felt overall blah.
Holly Hill Mayor Chris Villa describing unusual symptoms. A COVID positive patient alerting him he may have been exposed.
And we got tested that day, and we began self-isolating immediately when I received that text.
Now going on day 10 and still waiting for his test results.
It says at the top, but this isn't the video.
Yeah, maybe while I'm talking, you can Google that.
Okay.
Come up. I don't know. I'm hopefully next session we'll make sure things go a little bit more smoothly, but it is what it is in this new day and age. But with the state of Florida, when I was there years ago, when you saw that last slide, we actually went to the state house in Florida and was advocating for formerly incarcerated people's votes for them to be able to vote. And the governor signed an executive order that allowed them to vote. And then the next governor that came in took it away. And so this is why Desmond Meade had to fight to get it changed again. And he won, and it was a big deal. But then when it got changed, ultimately, they had restrictions. So if a person hadn't paid their fines and fees, then they couldn't vote. And for me, I believe voting is a basic fundamental human right, and that once a person has served their time, they should come out and be afforded the opportunity to be a part of the political process. Because like I explained to you earlier, you know, I felt less than, you know, everybody else on election day with everybody having their I voted stickers, but yet I couldn't go to the polls. I was put in a category with mentally retarded people or unconfident people, which I think is a national travesty for our country. to be one of the most democratic nations in the world. So if you're like me, I mean, I wanted to educate you about, you know, what's going on with felony disenfranchisement and seeing, you know, that certain celebrities are involved in helping the formerly incarcerated with the vote. But I will say that I am just spent with this election. So I just can't wait for November 3rd and for there to actually be a result, because actually that's when the real work is going to begin again. I mean, hopefully everybody's done all of what they can do on the ground. And I don't know how many of you all are eligible to vote, have registered to vote. And even if you can encourage, you know, family members to, you know, I know my daughter who's 10, she was like, Mom, are you going to vote early today? Are you going to vote early today? And eventually I was just like, let me just go ahead and do it. But also too, something that I want you all to know with regard to doing the work, especially in light of being in a pandemic, if you go to powerthepolls.org, I don't know if you know this or not, but high school students in certain states can to put in an application to be a poll worker and actually get paid to do it. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, I'm not sure if you'll be able to do it for this election because they may have already done some of the trainings for that. But because in elections past, normally the retired older community will be poll workers within, you know, where people go to vote. But you know, we kind of want to protect them. And if you want to be involved, that is one way that you can be involved in the voting process, which is to apply to get your rights restored. And that website is powerthepolls.org. And like I said, they will train you, they will pay you for that day of working at the polls, if that's something that you're interested in doing. And so I just want to have thoughts and questions that you may have for me or for Aman. Aman, are you still with us?
I'm here.
Okay. Questions that you may have or thoughts or concerns that you may have for either one of us.
I have a question for Aman. Do you think, I have no idea if early voting was a thing before the pandemic, it may have been, but do you think that that has helped at all in terms of it not being just this one big day where everyone can go vote, where now you can vote not like at any time, but like, and there's still difficulties obviously with that, with like figuring out where you're supposed to go and everything. But do you think it's helped at all? And do you think it should continue into the future as being an option if it hasn't been already?
Yeah, actually, early voting has always been a thing. So it's just, I think that people are pushing it a lot more now. But yeah, early voting has always been a thing. Usually in the past, I think the elderly, I think it, like in terms of like statistics and stuff, like the elderly would usually vote early just because they would obviously want to get out there before everyone else on election day. But I think that early voting in this election has definitely been helpful. I think that mostly just because one, I think just because it pushes people to get out to vote. I know that right now I've seen like a lot of my friends and my line sisters and my big sisters and things like that, like they're already posting like their I voted stickers and they're doing like little polls like, have you voted yet? Because they're voting early. And so I think that's been really helpful because it's kind of not forcing people, but kind of makes people look like, okay, like when am I going to vote? When does early voting end in my state? Do I have early voting in my state? Because I know that it differs on where you live, but I think early voting definitely should continue into the future. If it didn't, I would be shocked. But I think that it's a powerful tool because you've already casted your ballot, one, and two, come election day, we're going to see some results kind of already coming through just because of, I mean, millions and millions of people are early voting. I also think it's because people really want to see a result. So I think early voting is definitely a powerful tool and should definitely continue into the future for sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments about maybe not even just voting, but the session in general, the program? Okay. Well,
I have a question.
yes.
So about the whole voting, so I was doing a project for school actually a few days ago on the whole election thing. And while doing research, I came across an article about voting in general and how the popular vote doesn't always mean that that's going to be the president, whoever wins the popular vote. So then the question came to mind that does the popular vote even really matter, or what does the popular vote actually do to influence the election in general?
Aman,
Yeah.
yeah, Amaya, that is a very, very good question. And Aman, I'll let you address it. I mean, I know that is a lot of what people are frustrated about. And I do think our election process needs to be reevaluated. Not saying that this administration should be a part of it. And hopefully, you know, we'll see what if the Supreme Court has to even be involved in that aspect of it this go around. And of course, you know, that's why they're trying to push this Supreme Court justice there. Well, no, not she is trying to be Supreme Court justice. But Aman, do you want to respond to that question too?
Yeah, sure. That is like a major debate right now, especially after the 2016 election. So the popular vote basically means that's who the people wanted. So when people say all the time to this day, like Hillary had 3 million, like she had, I think it was like in terms of the popular vote, it was like 3 million plus people. It was actually crazy. Like it surpassed like for past presidents, like it was crazy. So the Electoral College is like this small group kind of people essentially who based on the electoral votes that the president gets from the state. So in order to be president, you have to get 270 electoral votes, right? So the Electoral College is like, okay, who got the 270 electoral votes? So in that case, at the time, it was Trump who got the 270. So the Electoral College was like, okay, Trump is president. But the popular vote says that the people wanted Hillary Clinton. And so the debate now is essentially to one, get rid of electoral colleges because they don't accurately depict who should be president. So say if the popular vote went to Trump, like millions and millions of people actually wanted Trump, then okay, that just says that the people wanted Trump to be president. That's democracy, democratic, whatever. But the conversation now is just that people are arguing that we should get rid of electoral colleges and are showing research from like other countries who don't even have electoral colleges because they don't accurately, determine who the president should actually be. And so that's a really good question. I think the popular vote in this election too will definitely be something that everybody looks at to see who the people wanted. But I think it's just an ongoing debate, and we'll kind of see how it'll shift because some states have actually already sued. I think the ACLU actually sued certain states and basically said that if the Electoral College does not choose who the popular vote is, then they can get sued. So things are kind of shifting, but we'll see what happens nationally as it relates to the popular vote and the electoral vote.